What makes a great olive oil?
So for me, freshness is definitely key. When you talk about health benefits and polyphenols and all the high levels of antioxidants that you want in a really healthy olive oil, something you really want to have in your as part of your healthy diet, you want to look for fresh oil, which means I follow the global harvest. So I'm one of those rare breeds that every quarter I travel, whether we're in the Mediterranean, which would mean Italy and Greece and Spain and Portugal, and then I travel south of the equator for their season, their fall, which is opposite of the Mediterranean in our summertime. So I'm there in Chile and Argentina, which Chile has beautiful fruit. I mean, the climate, the Mediterranean-like climate zone in Chile is beautiful. And then I'm just home, actually. If I have bags under my eyes, you'll know why. I've got jet lag. I'm just home from Australia, and hanging out with the kangaroos in the olive groves over there, where they also grow wonderful olive oil. So freshness and following the seasonality, those polyphenols and healthy antioxidants, they decline rapidly over time. So about 6 months, they start to deteriorate after the pressing. So for me, I'm on the global quest of freshness, which is a high quality indicator. Of course, picking the fruit very green, that makes a great olive oil. So if an olive is green when it's harvested, it will have about 10% yield inside the fruit, 10% oil. If you let that same olive hang on the tree until it's completely black, you could get up to 30% olive oil. So unfortunately, the oil quality and the health benefits of the higher levels of oil are not there. It's a healthy fat, yes, but you're not getting the antioxidants, the polyphenols, all the plant sterols, and all the health benefits you could be getting from a very early harvest oil. So that's why kind of like the Tuscans early on were very big. Like people would say a Tuscan style olive oil or the olive oil from Tuscany is the best, because they had a tradition in Tuscany to pick the very green fruit. They were one of the first people to do that and harvest that very green, flavorful, antioxidant powerhouse. So in general, I tend, my palate goes toward that fresh, green, powerhouse style of oils, as you're used to, like in the trio, that I send you.
Yeah, so, I think that's a good point. Now, sometimes in America, we see the words Nouveau Olio or Nouveau olive oil. Is that a sign that these were picked greener?
It can be a sign. Usually it's a sign of freshness, but I have some issues with that, because sometimes they'll bottle it in clear bottles, to show off its fancy color, which is great if you can consume it within the first few months of harvest. But unfortunately, with these some olive oils, people think like unfiltered, and they look for really cloudy olive oil, and that can be good the first few months of harvest, after harvest. So first of all, always looking at harvest date. Single estate farms. But what happens is, in an unfiltered oil, and if you lightly filter the oil or let it naturally settle before you bottle it, what can happen if there is sediment in the bottom of the bottle, that starts to ferment. So there's water in there, there's vegetable yeast, and that causes defects in the oil. So a high quality olive oil from a professional taster standpoint should have no defects in the oil to be considered extra virgin. It shouldn't be non-defective. So you would get those defects if the if all that was sediment was on the bottom and starting to ferment over time. But typically that is an early harvest style oil. That is a category, and some marketers have kind of latched onto that term, but it's not Novello or Nuovo if it's 9 months old, and so you got to check your harvest date. That's key.
I think that's a great point. It's a point I make in all my podcasts and videos, that you really need to see a harvest date on the label. And absolutely. The other thing that I warn people is that the sell by date or use by date is it's horrible, number one.
Yes.
Tell me why that is.
Sure, that's a super great question because really that is placed on there at the time of bottling, not the time of pressing. Especially if you're buying from one of the big bottlers, which has a lot of where they import a lot of different oils from a lot of different countries, and you can see on there when it says like sourced from, and you see the initials of 8 different countries. How much micromanagement do they really have of that product? I mean, olives, after all, are a fruit, right? So we have to think of them like fresh fruit juice. Yes, it unfortunately, yeah, it's based on a lot of times on bottle date, not on when the fruit was harvested or it was actually pressed. So yes, yeah, it's best to always look for harvest date, dark bottle, single estate, those sort of tips for sure.
Yeah, I've been shocked even going into gourmet grocery stores or gourmet wine shops and seeing these what appear to be, gorgeous, expensive olive oils. And in fact, I was in one last weekend, and I always pick up and look on the back, and many of these were pressed in 2015 and 2016,
Whoa.
And they're selling for $50 and $60 a bottle. And I'm going, what the heck are these doing here in this high-class store?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And Americans have been kind of tricked into buying like fancy bottles with nice cut glass and beautiful labels. And honestly, it's tough. It's really tough. The big bottlers are doing a better job than they were. They're transitioning away from the clear plastic bottles and over to at least tinted glass, light or tinted plastic, the PET bottles. It does keep some of the light out. Fluorescent lighting in grocery stores, not ideal for olive oil. Light destroys olive oil. So, the big bottlers are trying to do better, and are succeeding on some fronts. And there's a place in the olive oil market for everyone, whether you're the everyday consumer or if you're really focused on your health and want to use olive oil as a conduit and backbone to your healthy lifestyle, which is where we fall. We fall in that camp. So we want the best we can get our hands on.
All right, you brought up extra virgin olive oil. Or what the heck is extra virgin?
Okay, so extra virgin is the highest category of olive oil that's it's produced using solely mechanical means. So that means there's no heat involved, there's no chemicals involved. It's really the highest category. So it's got to have a very low level of acidity, and acidity in olive oil is not something you can taste. So people, consumers can't really identify acidity. What acidity tells you when you're doing a chemistry panel is the quality level of the fruit. So it's all about the quality level of the fruit. So were they picked immediately and taken to the mill immediately, or did they sit around for 48 hours? Were they really ripe fruit and they were placed in the back of a dump truck to produce bulk oil, or were they placed in small crates and carried to the mill? Were they left in the sun? Was there fly damage? So all these things deteriorate the fruit and will raise your acidity level. So you want a very low acidity level in the olive oil, and to be extra virgin. And honestly, the extra virgin category is actually pretty wide. Like, for example, in my oils are third-party tested by a lab in Italy. And to be considered extra virgin, it needs to be 0.8% or less of acidity. So the lower acidity, the better. So for example, I'm just pulling up a couple of my recent labs. Mine were not even at the 0.2 level. So very, very low acidity. So that's what you want to, look for. And some bottlers will actually put that on the label if they're super quality, minded. Look at sources like Flow Soleil, look at national competitions, look at the California olive oil competition that happens at the LA County Fair. Those are some good tips for identifying and just educating your palate and tasting olive oil and understanding what to look for are the best things you can do.
Yeah, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to talk with the minister of olive oil in Italy, and he makes a very good point. He said there is absolutely no proof that oleic acid, which is the monounsaturated fat in olive oil, and olive oil is not just oleic acid, but it's the major fat in olive oil. He says there's no proof that oleic acid has any major benefit over any other oil or monounsaturated fat. He said it's a carrier for the polyphenols and the antioxidants. And he said we have to understand that. And I think that was a very important point. There's nothing unique about this fat. It's what it's carrying to us.
It's a carrier. And you know, when you put high quality extra virgin olive oil, like my oils, on food, you actually your body accepts the nutrients even higher, at a higher level. You know, if you drizzle it. So when my wife's a great cook in our family, and when she sets a table with salt and pepper, the olive oil goes on the table at the same time, because we're splashing it on the way some people would, you know, who eat ketchup. We would be drizzling it on our broccoli or our green beans, or, you know, whatever, whether it's pork or whatever, you know, it's always drizzled with Mother Nature's sauce, right? So for us, you know, we use it that way, you know, to I guess absorb more nutrient, to get more nutrient value of the foods we're already eating for their health value.
You know, that's a great point, and it's something I just absolutely, first thing I tell my patients is, yeah, cook with olive oil, but olive oil has to come to the table. And you're absolutely right. It's right next to the salt and pepper. And in any home in Italy, in any trattoria in Italy, they bring the bottle to the table. And it's the foods to deliver olive oil.
Absolutely. And you know, I don't decant mine into like a clear cruet where sunlight can get to it and things like that. Like, I prefer to store it, you know, in the cabinet with my salt and pepper. We like a really clean, you know, clean area, more minimalist look in our home, so we keep things away. But when it's time to set the table, it's the same as putting silverware on the table. It comes out, you know, and that's our habit. So I'm not a big fan of, you know, clear cruets and that sort of thing for, you know, and buying big jugs of olive oil. You know, oxygen kills olive oil, light kills olive oil, and high temperature kills olive oil. Now, the nice thing, you mentioned, you know, cooking with olive oil, and I think that's something that's
our next subject.
Okay, good. So go ahead.
All right. So we've actually had a fat expert on our program. And one of the myths that is out there that I try to dispel, and hopefully you'll join me on this, olive oil, everybody says, well, heat damages olive oil because you can't cook with it because it smokes. And that's proof that it's damaged. Olive oil has a low smoke point. It starts smoking fairly early, but it turns out it is the least oxidizable oil there is. It actually oxidizes less than coconut oil, which is kind of the gold standard. Wow. And so, can you cook with olive oil?
Absolutely. I walk into every Italian, Spanish kitchen, and that grandmother who's in her 90s is, you know, cooking everything, whether it's the, you know, chicken Parmesan, or whether, you know, what she fries in it, she sautés in it, she roasts her peppers in it. Like, there's nothing that they're not using olive oil for in the Mediterranean, and getting all the benefits of fresh oil there at least once a year. Even if you were to live in Italy, you would only have access to fresh oil once a year. So you can cook with olive oil. I would say that the higher level of antioxidants and polyphenol level in the oil to begin with actually protects the oil when you're cooking with it. So in my home, I love fried eggs for breakfast. So Megan will make some fried eggs for me, and she knows to cook my eggs over, and she she's, like I said, a great cook, but she cooks my eggs over medium-low heat, and she does that in the fresh pressed olive oil. And honestly, I can't tell the difference between the fresh oil that was placed into the pan and what's on my plate after the fact. That because we're pretty heavy users in our household, like you, taking one from your playbook, and so it doesn't break down if you cook at a lower temperature, and just respect. Like, one tip would be, don't heat the pan with the oil inside. Heat the pan on the stove, then add your oil, then add your other component. And that just keeps your oil from sitting there, oxidizing and breaking down. So that's just one little, takeaway tip.
Great tip. All right.